everyone, I'm Simra here at the Colors Organization. Welcome back to another episode here. Today we're going to be talking about navigating life, specifically generational trauma. Here, sat with me is Robert Edward Carter Jr., co-director and clinical coordinator at Men's Center for Growth and Change, Philadelphia. You're also involved in anger management and domestic violence programs as well, but more affectionately known as Brother Rob. I'm really excited here to be with you, and I'm excited to chat, so thank you for coming out, and I can't wait to get into it.
Well, I appreciate being asked to speak with you and meeting you, and Colors has been, I've been connected and known about Colors for many years with my work with the Center for AIDS Research Community Advisory Board. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I just believe that serious conversations about generational trauma are bigger than just myself, but I've just happened to be fortunate enough to work with people who have done much more work releasing some of the things that have happened to them. So
absolutely.
And I lean heavily on my experiences.
Absolutely, so, which is why you're here, and I'm so excited.
Thank you.
So speaking on generational trauma, in your experience, with your own personal experience through life, what is generational trauma to you, if you could give a definition for it?
Wow, okay. Definition for generational trauma. I would really love for folks to understand that my definition of generational trauma would have to begin within the context that human beings are designed to be treated well. And when human beings aren't treated well, that mistreatment gets internalized, and that's pain and hurt. So we've had generational hurts and pains that people have experienced. And over time, we've come to study that, we meaning practitioners in the field working with people around trauma. I think Dr. Joy Leary probably explains it the best. She's an author of a book, Post-Trauma Slavery Syndrome, which she's actually studied and looked at people over the years, and she shares this story about being in this parent group, and one of the white parents, was she was commenting on her child's doing really well, the white child doing well, and them being in high school and them being good academic, and then the white parent was getting ready to comment on the black parent's child who was in high school, and the black parent said, "Oh yeah, he's all right. He's not that big a deal. Don't make too much out of him. It's not that great." And she had said that has been a behavior pattern that she believes over time, because black folks were fearful that their children could be sold or snatched from them. So just kind of like undermining their accomplishments, their appreciation. And that's just an example. So, but that example sticks out for me because I think that in working with the human beings, it's important to to have a strong history of human beings. No human being has the same history, and no group of human beings, they have certain shared histories, but that their experience, for example, I think one of the most traumatic events in this nation's history, well, the two, is the Native American hurt and pain, and what Africans have called the Ma'afa, which some people call the slave trade. So I would say generational trauma is the hurt that we know that can be felt inside, that is carried along with us over time.
Put it, I completely agree. I don't think people understand that all of these things connect and they trickle down. It's a trickle down effect. And to be brave and stand in your truth is fighting not only people but generational trauma too. And that's powerful, and that's bravery too within it too.
And different people have different kind of descriptions. Like I was talking in a lot of my like research around with Native American communities and some indigenous communities, they may insert and say ancestral trauma. They may and in certain feels in certain groups, the appreciation and the kind of like tribute and connection to our ancestors is important. So we often say we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. We also may be standing on some of our ancestors' pain.
Absolutely.
And trying to live through some of it that's still in our DNA.
Absolutely.
You know, they've often did these studies about some of the transmissional damages that have been done to the Jewish community from the Holocaust, and they've been doing these studies. And I think the Vietnam War helped us a lot in kind of like understanding trauma, just realizing that if you leave a horrendous situation, you may be safe, but you may not be feeling safe. Yeah. You may be feeling something. Before the camera started rolling, I was telling you a little story, because I'm not only just someone who studied and worked in the field of trauma, I look at myself as being a survivor, a thriver from it, and having my own traumatic experiences and working in different sections of Philadelphia. I used to believe that if I thought something bad was going to happen to me, that was a good sign, because that means it wouldn't happen. But the fact that this thought would come across, and that I would walk through it, it would be okay. And then over therapy, being in therapy myself and coming to understand, like, wow, you know what? Just imagine how you might feel inside if you didn't think something bad could possibly happen to you, if you weren't ready for the shoe to drop. And working with some perpetrators of violence, and also listening to some mostly women who've been survivors from abuse, that waiting for the shoe to drop, it can almost be totally encompassing your very being, that some may even instigate. Okay, I'm not even going to wait for it to drop. You know, I'm going to call something for it to drop. So I think if we really want to become a therapeutic community for folks, some of the places that I've worked, like I worked in a psychiatric hospital for years, and we always talk about a therapeutic milieu, like how can you create a community where people who've been hurt can live and enhance through this. I think some of that stuff we should talk about in the community outside now, because we've experienced a lot of trauma. Currently, I'm the co-director for the Men's Center for Growth and Change. We've been around about 45 years, and primarily I'm working with mostly men around domestic abuse, anger management, and conflict resolution. And a lot of my work entails healing from trauma. And
that I really want to understand, because why do you believe, because we talk about vulnerability, we talk about pockets of joy, pockets of empowerment. Why do you think it's important for generations to have that vulnerable conversation where we discuss trauma, violence, joy, and like how we were discussing when the cameras were off, love? Why do you think that's so important?
I think it's so important because if we're not willing to help transform the trauma, it will be transferred.
Absolutely.
It just will be passed on. So, and I think that's why I think it's so important to talk histories and to know histories, to know family histories, to tell your family's history, to ask your parents, you know, what were some of the things that they have experienced, to ask your grandparents what. My mother's 91 years old. The other day she was talking about how her grandparents, the Pitts, Richard Pitts and Elijah Pitts, how they came from Georgia, and they came up here because Richard Pitts felt disrespected by this white man, and the story be told is he's killed him and he had to leave. He had to get out of town because he knew he was going to be hung. And so and I'm 70, that's the first time I've heard bits of that story, but never really heard that story. Families have a lot of racial traumatic stories that you're telling them could be a strengthening tool, not even a tool, but a reinforcer that you've had those who have made it, who have gone through this, and you have it within you, because no one is not going to be hurt, disrespected, or disappointed going from the baby cradle to the grave, right? So why not talk about these things?
Absolutely.
Why not have
bring awareness to it?
Bring awareness. It's a woman I love a lot, Brene Brown. She's an educator, a doctor that has done a lot of work around vulnerability and the importance of being vulnerable, and and how vulnerability in of itself can strengthen you. Can strengthen you in terms of dealing with the hurt and pain. I tell this story, and because some traumas are passed on, I want to say, gender. So I've worked with mostly men, right? So I often tell this story about how I'm working in daycare, I'm working at Nana Bears, and this little girl, I remember Eric, she falls from the monkey bars, she hits the ground, bam! She's crying, ah! And I run over there and I pick her up. She's like, and I hug her and I pat her and I set her down. She's about 4 years old, and then I walk her back when we get together, because we had about 50 children, and we walk back, and being at the head of the line and holding the teacher's hand was a big deal. You know, I felt so special because being with the kids, and we got back. About a month later, Jonathan fell from that same spot. And he fell, and I heard him, and I saw him, and I stood about 20 feet from him, and I said, "Jonathan, you all right? Suck it up." And I'm not proud of this. I did it. Jonathan was still hurting. Jonathan was still crying, and I seen him just trying to make his tears go back in his head. And I get that now. I tell that story a lot. That happened years ago. If I've told that story in a halfway prison house with men, and some of the responses be, "Yo, you want Johnny to be a punk? You want to be a little bitch?" I mean, hey, yo, he needed to suck it up. I don't even see nothing wrong with that story. I said, well, but Jonathan's 4, Erica was 4, Jonathan has hurt. I didn't even acknowledge this. Yeah, but you don't want to be babying him. So it's the way we're being human can be challenged. And I think that is important in starting a healing process that's been generations in the making. We've had some major hurts.
And I'm curious about that, because speaking as someone who grew up, you know, I was born in 2000, Generation Z. How has, in your point of view, how has society changed? What have you noticed? How have you seen kids or even people younger than you move with? Does it inspire you? Do you feel resentment? Are you, like, what does that feel like for you in your body when you see younger folks forging paths for themselves, or maybe they're confused? What does that feel like for you? Or I guess, how have you noticed it changed? How have you noticed society change?
In a lot of ways, and I just feel honored, hyped, hopeful, and ready to usher us into a new time. We've changed a lot. Human beings have changed a lot. The context is different. I'm born May 30th, 1952, right? So I'm 70 years old. I remember when, you know, you playing in a box. The toy came in the box, but the box was so big, you might be playing in that till you tore it up for like a week. And the creativity factor of not having a lot that can just do something for you. Like, and working in daycare, I'm a great storyteller. I could hold children's attentions with some of my stories. It's getting a little bit more challenging, and then maybe my skills is dropping some, but I'm also in front of folks who are having a hard time putting this machine down that we call a cell phone. That's hypnotic in its own right, and there's study about how that's taking your attention. I went to school 10 blocks away as an elementary school student. We came home for lunch. My mom was home for lunch every day. So you go to school in the morning, walk back home, your mom is there, yo mom, get lunch, then go back to school. So that's a whole, that whole socialization process is different than being there all day. Nobody might not be home. You know, you'll have a key, it's a different orientation we get to about being human. And what I've noticed with is that if you get information quickly, it also can affect your level of impatience.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know. And what I'm seeing is, people's impatience being a little higher, in addition to people being able to receive information in different variety of different ways. Like some people are receiving a lot of information not just from talking to somebody, they may also get it from the machine. I also do see young people being able to read people too. So like even in the midst of all this, it's gems coming up and who are able to kind of pick up things.
Absolutely.
Musically, creatively. It's like some of these people are doing stuff like you didn't rehearse all these hours to be able to do that, but but somehow your cellular memory, you're getting this. You're able to perform. You're able to kind of do. You're able to connect. So I'm definitely not woe is me. I also believe we have to give more lessons around internal power and emotional intelligence to young people.
So speaking on this internal power that I am hearing from you, I'm really interested to hear more because just like my own generation, my own experience, a lot of people I feel like my age do lack, or not lack, but finding this internal empowerment because online we're constantly looking for external validation on the screen, whether it's through digital, like societal fakeness in a very like complex way, because the online world is just another battle to be addressed. But I guess speaking on your own experience, how has the way you addressed hardship and triggers changed throughout your life? Because we were even talking before, but you were very different when you were younger, right? So how has that changed for you? How, when you get triggered, when you face a hardship, how has that changed? What does that trajectory look like for you?
Well, I think in, looking at trauma, I think it's important to believe, to know, and in my case also experience what healing also looks like. What does health look like?
Yeah.
What does being, held in love looks like? And I think it has to begin within.
Yeah.
You have looking in yourself, because internal power begins within, and someone who's strong and in love deeply with themselves and can connect with other people and look for that in others, because we're gonna need a squad to really deal with this. It's not gonna be Superman or the one. I love the Matrix, but the whole idea that it has to be one dude that is the one. We're all the one. All of us are the one. And so when we ones who are strong come together to do something for the good, I think that's so important. The internal power is part of the healing process, to be as whole as you possibly can be, particularly in a culture that values you upon what they believe you can contribute or cannot. The capitalistic model really determines and states loudly, if I can purchase something for as little as I can and then sell it then I'm a genius. I might have bought it for $2, I sold it for $20,000, then I made it. But I think that sometimes that mentality can come within, and one can feel like, hey, I want to get as much as I can from you, but I don't want to give as much as I can from me. In fact, if it gets really warped, then that's almost like a vampiristic relationship with it. So someone just wants something from, and I believe that the pandemic has provided a major traumatic event that has caused us to shift.
Absolutely.
Right? And in our shifting, there's been some growth and development. Personally, you talked about trauma. I'm someone who realizes and appreciates that I've gained so much from being in the company of other people and helping other people, that when the pandemic came, I went into total decline of not being able to be connected with folks. And I just felt depressed. I just didn't know what to do with myself. And that's when a lot of my meditation began to increase, like going internal, like just focusing on my breath, doing more writing, doing some poetry. I think it's also important to be physical, because some of this stuff has to be taken off us. This guy, Dr. Fran Berlintnikoff, I'm messing up his name, but he wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score.
Body keeps score.
Yes, and what happens when you're being hurt, you're being damaged, it takes it in, and some of this can be alleviated through discussion, talk therapy. Some of it can be alleviated through going within, but some of it has to be externalized. That's why I think walking, exercises, and back in the day, what I used to do, dance my ass off. I'm a great dancer, and I think there's so much from moving and dancing and communally, just being together, having a good time, and everybody in it. There was no specialty where you circling the one person dancing, everybody's dancing. So I've noticed that difference now.
You know where we should go?
Where?
Rage Room in Philadelphia. You can bring, there's like TVs, they're all broken down, but there's TVs, there's glass. You can go in, smash some stuff with a baseball bat, throw stuff across the room. You're in protective gear.
You been there?
Once.
What?
Life-changing. That's so funny. But speaking on healing, speaking on just like putting yourself first and your mentality and your mindset and loving yourself throughout it too, because generational trauma really, it makes me emotional, because I just, the intensity of emotion and the intensity of that trauma, especially when the more that you become aware of it, that intensity sticks with you and it follows with you in conversations. And it's in a lot of ways, it's so painful, but healing in itself is very liberating. Healing is liberating, but it's so hard. You're grieving, you're mourning past versions of yourself. You're grieving past relationships. You're constantly just grieving too while healing. So where does rest and where does joy exist within healing for you? And how do you cultivate that for yourself?
Wow. I think over the years I have embraced the hugest traumatic event in my life and realized how it's catapulted me to be the person who I am. At age 14, I was delivering newspapers for the Philadelphia Inquirer about 5 o'clock in the morning. And, I had a route of like 58 dailies and 72 Sundays, and I believe it was a Friday. And I came home and I was still cold, because it was actually around February. And at 14, I came home, we had an electric stove, I turned on the electric stove. I had my back, I was standing in front of the stove to get warm, because I just felt like I couldn't get warm. Somehow my shirt tail fell on the coils of the stove. And instead of stopping, dropping, and rolling, I ran around the kitchen table screaming and hollering. My mother and father ran downstairs. My father knocked me down and started patting the fire out with his hands, and he got burned. My mother threw flour on the fire. I just remember being in excruciating pain and cursing around my parents for the first time. I'm like, oh my God, I'm cursing, I'm saying. But I was balled up in a fetal position, and I was screaming and hollering, and the ambulance came. They came and got me. And and I remember people looking, at the sheet. I was laying on a gurney in the hospital, and people would say one thing, but I would see another. They said, "Oh, you're going to be all right," but their eyes looking in my eyes, I could see, "Ooh, this is not a good thing." And I was feeling bad. That experience that may have lasted 5 minutes, I was burned deeply. I wind up staying in Misericordia Hospital for 4 years, 9 months, and 23 days straight.
Wow.
The first year I was in isolation, where I couldn't, if you came in, you had to wear gloves, you had to wear a gown.
Wow.
You had to be dressed up, and I was in this solution called silver nitrate. I was in tremendous pain. I remember doing a talk on trauma at this Northwest Treatment Center, and a woman was in the audience years later, and as I was talking, she said, Bobby Carter, I wonder what happened to him. And if you call me Bobby Carter, that means you know me from Pine Street, you know me really. And I remember she said that, and during the break, she had said, yeah, I was a unit clerk at Misericordia, where you were at. And I remember being 16, 17, and I wanted to quit. And because I couldn't stand hearing you scream and holler all the time. And when she said that, I don't even remember what happened afterwards. You know, I know I went back on stage, I know I spoke, but it was like I was back there. I was like, oh shit. And I got through it.
Yeah.
I got through it, and getting through it. And one of the things that have been helpful is just say, hey, you made it. You made it, man. Yo, you made it. You here, you made it. And so now doing work with people and saying, hey, you made it. You're not there anymore. You know, touch the stuff that's real. Breathe, do some meditation, because sometimes it can come back and it can be overwhelming. And sometimes working with another person can trigger you in a way that you're back there. So doing this work, it's very important for me to live healing, to live in understanding, appreciate healing. And I think that's important to teach and say out loud. What can we learn? Because we will recover. This is one of my favorite books now. This is Yusef Salaam, The Power of Hope and Living on Purpose. This guy was one of what they were calling the Central Park Five. And they call themselves the Exonerated Five. They were placed in prison for a crime they didn't commit. Kids, 15. He did 7 years. This book is such uplifting because it's like, okay, in this massive hurt, he found some things that was important. Number one, he starts the book off talking about they don't know who they had. I'm bigger than this.
Absolutely.
Than what you're accusing me of. This is not me. I'm bigger than someone who's been burnt or someone who's been called a nigger. I know that's not me. So that's a big part, going within again, really knowing who you are. It's great to see young people who are so self-assured. It's like, yo, I'm dancing like this. This is how I want to do it. I don't care, you know, and teaching them skills. Because if you're going to get teased, why not help people with some comeback lines? Like, I was listening to this one podcast, and the person was sitting around boys being teased going out in sports. I mean, we just lost 3 football players, you know, who were killed at the University of Virginia. That is, sometimes the traumatic events happen and they're not even secondhand. We don't even know these people, and that hurts. Absolutely. To get a young person to go to college, to be there, and then their life be taken by another young person.
You know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing just like acceptance. I'm hearing acceptance for everyone around you, but also acceptance at an individual level, because people can frankly be going through shit. People can be run through the ringer. But if someone, and I am envisioning my own life, if I, in moments where I could not anymore, if someone just looked at me and said, hey, the stage that you're in right now, it's a mess, you feel triggered, but I see you and I accept you. And just because you're going through this, you're not less valued, you're not less loved, you're not less accepted, you're just you, and that's like, okay.
Hey, in my group, the Unity, we're a performance art ensemble band. It's 3 of us, Kitsy Waterson, Dominic Cartwright, and we have a piece, we do poems, we play drums, I play the trumpet also, and we have a greeting that is really not ours, but it's ancient African greeting, where we actually ask the audience, and we begin with each other. We say, I see you, and your response is, I am here, I see you. I see you.
Beautiful.
And then you say, I am here. You say, I am
here.
I see you, when you say to me.
And I see you.
I am here. I see you.
And what a beautiful way to end this.
That's power.
Power.
Connecting with one another.
Power, resiliency. Community just brings so much love and healing. And it's a part of life's journey. Life is a journey.
Life is
We're
a journey,
just
each
walking
and
down
every
the
day.
path of it. Thank you so much, Brother Rob.
Thank
Brother
you.
Rob, is there anything that you would like to share promote yourself a little bit. I know you are in some classes as well. You're a teacher. You're doing amazing, amazing work. One thing I will like to say is you are a father not only to your children, but to communities around you. We need more father figures like you. Sitting here with you today has just healed me a lot, and I really do appreciate it. But if there's anything else you would like to say.
Wow, I appreciate being here with you today, Simra. It's been beautiful. I connect with you on a spirit level. You're funny, and I like being funny too. And I think it's important to be able to laugh with just being in the world. Some things that are really, really important to me. Number one, I'm leaving here. I'm going to be teaching at the university, co-teaching at the University of Pennsylvania with my man Eric Grimes, Shamari, and Dr. Howard Stevenson. We teach a class called Psychoeducational Interactions with Black Males. And that's a class that primarily works with teachers, social workers, and counselors who we think we would like to get on the same page and understand that oftentimes black boys in particular are looked upon as they're older, more dangerous, and needing of surveillance. And that perception has also helped fuel the prison industrial complex. So people are now saying, school to prison pipeline. I hate that saying. Let's break the school to prison pipeline. That when you really think about it, sometimes we accept levels of trauma trinkles like that, because that's horrible. I'm also the executive co-director of the Men's Center for Growth and Change. We've been around over 40-something years. We work primarily with people dealing with issues around anger management, domestic abuse, and people who are healing from trauma. I think our work has been phenomenal. We are an institution that has been around a long time, and after a while you get to learn how the best ways of engaging someone who in themselves has been acting in a way that's been problematic. We had a small contract with the city, so we get some people who may be in simple assault cases, and just like Brian Stevenson says, a guy who wrote part of the movie Just Mercy. When I was with Penn, we would go to his place every year. He says, no one is the worst thing they've ever done. No one is the worst thing they've ever done. So
beautiful.
I think, I hold on to that.
Beautiful.
Wow, so that's me professionally. I'm happily married, 47 years. I have 4 adult children, 9 grandchildren. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
It's a good thing. Full house. And I'm looking forward to the holidays. And for folks, and for the holidays, sometimes it's tough for people. I just started being happy about the holidays because I spent a lot of holidays when I was in the hospital, and that was not a happy time being in the holidays. So, growing. So being someone who's been immersed in traumatic experiences and working with people, I feel like, hey, what happened to me was major part of my syllabus for being where I am now.
Amazing. Beautiful. Truly beautiful. Like revolutionary work you're doing. You're changing it for everyone. So I thank you.
I appreciate you.
And thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you once again, Brother Rob, for coming in. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And stay tuned for the future episodes. Bye.